With us right now, Suzanne Levine. She's the Executive Director for the Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. And I will say, Suzanne, I think the chambers, not only here in West Bloomfield, but across the state of Michigan, you all have been the lifeline during the COVID-19 crisis for so many of our businesses.
Good morning. And you look marvelous, by the way.
Thank you. It's all about the lighting.
I have to get some of that lighting here.
My husband, every day, he'll go and he'll watch the show and then comes in and he tweaks it a little bit here, a little bit there. It's like, it takes 3 or 4 different lighting setups here, Suzanne, trust me.
That's great. That's great. Yes, I'm really thrilled at how all the chambers have come together. And we often speak about what we can do or some new initiatives. But the bottom line is that we are here to serve the community and hopefully, when we come out of this dark tunnel, that there will be a lot of light and prosperity and stories to tell our children and grandchildren about, oh, remember the time.
It is. I remember the time we walked 4 miles in the snow during the 76 snowstorm. But these stories are going to be so much greater and so much more important. But with that, you recently did introduce some new members to the chamber there in West Bloomfield. And with that, though, what advice do you have for them coming in during the pandemic?
You're talking about the board members, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. I think the advice that I would give them is that they are going to be much more needed in our community for advice, their wealth of experience. And I think I mentioned on the show that one of my new initiatives is to actually connect our chamber members. They're going to be assigned a board member. So this is someone that they can use as a resource, perhaps for advice, suggestions, or maybe they can do some, mutual business. But I think it's really important for our community now to understand that our board of directors is the backbone of our chamber. And so they've sort of played kind of like a hidden role, supporting my efforts. But now I want them to be more proactive because we could use all the help that we can get.
And you have some great new board members, but with that as well, we hear a lot about pandemic fatigue. Are you experiencing that as well as someone who's in charge and helping businesses kind of navigate this crisis going into 10 plus months?
Yes, I think the businesses are weary because there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. I know that Whitmer has loosened some of the lockdown restrictions. I think some of the gyms were able to open and the indoor seating for the restaurants. Unfortunately, because we live in a climate that isn't conducive to being outdoors, I think it's exacerbated some of this pandemic fatigue. I have relatives in Florida that don't seem to be, feeling the same pandemic fatigue. So yes, and so we're trying to figure out ways that we can maybe hybrid or transition into some outdoor safe activities until we get the all clear, whenever that may be.
That is such a good point because I'm seeing a lot of people on my social media feeds and they're going to some of these other states just to get a break from Michigan and some of our restrictions because other states don't have the same restrictions. And it's almost like it's not just to go out to eat. This is more than being able to eat outdoors. It's a mental reset for them.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone really understood what kind of social animal we all are, that we really need that connection. I notice that if I'm even in line someplace, people will just start talking to me. In fact, they give me information that maybe I don't want to. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? I'm sorry, your marriage is falling apart. So I think people are so desperate and hungry for that human connection that we need to figure out a way. And I really don't like the word, social distance. I think they should have said physical distance, because that really is what it is. And we have to be physically distant from people, but the social, no, we need this connection. We need to, I feel bad for the seniors that are in assisted living homes because they haven't had that contact. And we know that that emotional support is so critical, especially during these times.
I love that you just said that because I never thought of it before, but physical distance rather than social distance. And it is about how we frame some of these words. And I believe the Detroit News today had an article on about our seniors. And one of the reasons they're having such a hard time trying to even attempt to get the vaccine is because we have to remember there is a large section of our population that they are not on the internet. They are not comfortable with the internet. I know some of my neighborhood activists from Detroit I used to work with on stories in Detroit. I'm still in contact with them. They're not even comfortable texting. And we're telling them they need, everything has been pushed to this online platform. And I would imagine over this past a year, we've heard a lot of conversations, or behind the scenes are a lot of conversations going on with some of the business owners that too are old school in the way that they operate, and they are not up to speed on technology, and they're not comfortable with technology as well.
Right. I know that, part of it is, yes, they're fearful. Unlike the younger generations that they just pick up an iPad or a remote or good on the computer, they're not afraid of breaking anything. But, the older generation is sort of like Ralph Rex the internet. So I think they're fearful, and they need to be educated and trained. And it would be great if we could have people go into these assisted living, because these people are still pretty with it. They just are physically unable maybe to, take care of themselves or cook for themselves. But it would be great if they could have some classes and some training to show you don't have to be afraid. This is a great way to connect with, your cousin in California, or someone even, in another country. And I noticed that we have a little bit of an issue with our senior resource group. We used to do these talk times, and they were in person at our fabulous Connect through West Bloomfield Parks and Rec. And when we have the talk times virtually, we do not get the same audience. Where we were getting 30 to 40, people in person, we're getting maybe 5 to 10 online. So yes, I think we have to have some sort of education process for them. I think it's really important because they need to be connected. How horrible must it feel for this group that feels so isolated to begin with, and now not to be able to see their loved ones or their grandkids, which brings them such great joy.
That is such a good point. And they are a group that we need to be able to reach out to and connect with as well. Suzanne, knowing that, what is the future for local businesses here going into 2021? What advice would you give them? Because we're still in the midst of this.
Right. And I think we're going to be in the midst of it for a while. I know that you touched briefly on, there are all these grants, PPP, employer retention tax credits that people should be applying for. They can go to oak.gov, they can go to the state of Michigan. We did send out an e-blast yesterday with some links. And I know it's kind of daunting, the paperwork and trying to get in, but it's definitely worth it. So if they can, try to ask their accountant, or, they can go to Oakland County One Stop Business Center. They can give them some referrals, but they really should look into these. There's a separate grant for venues, for entertainment venues. So they should take advantage of this to try to tide them over until, we understand really what's going to happen. But I do believe once things can really reopen, there's going to be a flood of people going into stores, going into venues, because, like you say, this pandemic fatigue, people are very anxious and hungry for, being out. I even noticed last year, like in April, in my neighborhood, I didn't even know that we had half these neighbors. I've never seen them before. It's like, I've lived here for over 20 years, and I didn't know that you were my neighbor. Very different than when we were growing up, where all the kids played outside. Now everyone was inside with the computers and technology. Now we're sick of it. Now that we're forced to use it, we're tired of it. Isn't that interesting? Before it was kind of like, oh, this is great. And now it's like, no, this is not the way that I want to live my life, being in front of a computer screen 24/7.
We are all zoomed out. And the thing is I'm only on it a few hours a day. I couldn't imagine business people and they're working till 7 to 8 o'clock at night, but also some of the students on top of that. And then we're asking them, hey, let's do all these events virtual on top of that as well. So if we can kind of go back quickly to some of the grants, because the grants that are available, they make for a great headline for our politicians, but actually being able to get through to apply, and then once you do apply, getting that full allotment of the grant, because you'll notice a lot of times too, they say the wording is up to a certain amount. And even if we're looking at some of our businesses that have had to close during this latest pause, if you're saying, hey, $20,000 is great. But for a lot of them, that is not even a drop in the bucket for them and trying to catch up during this pandemic. But what advice would you give to some of these businesses? Are there other grants available that are out there that maybe don't make the headlines?
Well, I think that employee retention tax credit hasn't gotten quite the play. And I was advised to contact our payroll company or your accountant to find out how you can qualify, because this is actually a tax credit. So it's pretty amazing. And it's not the same kind of thing where there's only going to be so much of it. I think it can apply to everyone who has a business and obviously employees. Yeah, I know it's pretty frustrating because I applied for several grants, but chambers are in a weird category because we're a nonprofit, but that's still a strange category, and we didn't qualify for a lot of them. But now this new one that just released, and I got on at 9:01. I tried to get on at 9, and I was 2,400 in the queue. I know people that were 4,000 and 8,000. They didn't get on until 5:30 at night, but they did get on. Now they claim it's not first come, first serve, but I would love to know what the real criteria is, how they decide how to allot this money, because I know from some of the other grants, you can look at who got them, and sometimes it's a bit surprising. Like, really? This person is always boasting how wealthy they are and they got this grant, and then, other small businesses that really could use even 5,000, it'll still sustain them for a small amount of time. I think in addition to the grants, everyone has to kind of look at their business and reinvent themselves. I always was a big person on reinvention anyway. I think that there are no jobs for life anymore, and there are no career paths for life, just as there's no businesses for life. Who would predict that, if you invested in Clorox and wipes and masks, that you could be a multimillionaire? That's something we really, didn't even think about. Or even, a lot of the gyms now, because a lot of people have gone online to do their classes online. So they're going to have to rethink their model as well. Maybe having a hybrid of a combination of online classes as well in the gym. So I think that, everyone has to kind of look at their business model. And if we could be a futurist and really predict, what's going to be the next big thing. But, contact, as I say, not only, chambers, your local chambers, because we have a lot of resources, but Oakland County has this one-stop, shop business center. It's free, and they can look at your business plan. They can tell you, well, there's too many hair salons in your area. Maybe you shouldn't think about opening there. They're amazing. And this is like a fabulous resource through Oakland County. People are not using, and they should.
And that is the beautiful thing about the chamber, but also a lot of credit to you, Suzanne, throughout the pandemic, because you have been working countless hours trying to bring some of these business owners together and also connecting them to these resources so that they can survive. So we want to say thank you for your dedication to the community as well, because we know small businesses are the backbone of our communities, especially small communities such as the ones that we live in. So thank you, Suzanne, for all of your hard work.
Of course, I mean, I wish I could invent a cure for COVID, cancer, and all the problems of this world. But if I can keep someone in business another month, year, forever, then, I've done a really great job. So that's my goal, is to try to keep businesses, to sustain them and hopefully thrive at the end of all of this.
Wow, we thank you so much. And let's say cheers and hopefully to a better 2021, right?
Absolutely. And it was great seeing you. You're doing a fabulous job. We're very appreciative too of Civic Center TV and Motown Digital, because you're giving us information and it's really important. We need an alternative to the news.
Well, thank you for that. I will say 20 plus years in the news industry, but doing this show each and every day, I learn something new every day. So I hope our audience takes the time out to be able to listen to some of the interviews and they get something from it as well. Suzanne, great to see you. We'll have to get together in person at some point in time when the restrictions are lifted, right?
Absolutely, for a cup of coffee or a cup of something else.
An igloo is in our future.
Absolutely, I predict.
Suzanne, thank you for your time.